All right. Well, the opening, if you might have come in late, you might not have seen the screensaver, but it was a particularly fiery looking Enzo, and Enzo is a kind of Zen circle that Zen masters would draw with Sumi ink. And the interesting thing about doing these kinds of Zen circles, well, let me, in case you missed it. This is a good Enzo, a good Zen circle here because um, the art of it is to you do it. Well, we've got our music on too. Yeah, this machine knows what it's doing. It's sometimes when I don't. The art of the Zen circle is to do it in one stroke. Anywhere, anytime you pause when you use Sumi ink on paper, it'll blot. So you have to do it in one stroke, no hesitation. That's part of the practice of doing Enzos. And the art of it is never quite closing the circle, if you can see. This guy's done it well. Never quite close the circle. You always leave a little bit of opening there. So that's called an Enzo, I guess it's SO. And that is a pretty good one there. So I've got a poem for you today that deals with that whole concept of, because the heart of the Zen circle is it's empty. And so how do you deal with emptiness? The Zen guys are keen on that, but it's in all the traditions, whether it's really understanding what Holy Saturday is about in the Christian tradition that we just came out of Holy Week. Holy Thursday is a day of emptiness. And the Sufis have a great tradition of that too. For one thing, Rumi's Sufis, I'm going to give you a poem, a prayer from Rumi today. Rumi's Sufis are a particular kind of Sufis that whirl. So they're constantly moving in a circle. Okay, they do this dance. Not all Sufis are in the Mevlana tradition. There's some that are just silent Sufis and meditating Sufis, and who knows, basketball playing Sufis, maybe, I don't know. But for Rumi's guys, they had their left foot down and they would go around in a circle. So Rumi had something to say about circles. So I want to read this to you today, and then we'll meditate on it a bit, and it'll lead us into dropping into the emptiness of contemplation. This will be in tomorrow's mail out. It's called the Zero Circle. And Rumi, so this is 13th century, so we're talking like almost 800 years ago, that Rumi had this view. This is a view. He said, be helpless, dumbfounded, unable to say yes or no. Then a stretcher will come from grace to gather us up. We are too dull-eyed to see that beauty. If we say we can, we're lying. If we say no, we don't see it. That no will behead us and shut tight our window into spirit. So let us rather not be sure of anything besides ourselves, and only that. So miraculous beings come running to help. Crazed, lying in a zero circle, mute, we shall finally be saying with tremendous eloquence, lead us. When we have totally surrendered to that beauty, we shall be a mighty kindness. Rumi makes so many leaps in his poetry that when you hear it the first time, it's just, he goes from A to B to J to W. That's just the nature of his consciousness. It's all connected in some a weird way, but at first listen, it's hard to get. So I'm going to recite it a second time, and then we'll sort of open it up a little bit. Be helpless, dumbfounded, unable to say yes or no. Then a stretcher will come from grace to gather us up. We are too dull-eyed to see the beauty. If we say we can, we're lying. We say no, we don't see it. That no will behead us and shut tight our window into spirit. So let us not be sure of anything besides ourselves, and only that. Then miraculous beings come running to help. Crazed, lying in a zero circle, mute, we shall be saying finally with tremendous eloquence, lead us. When we have totally surrendered to the beauty, we shall be a mighty kindness. Yeah. One of my favorite Rumis. Well, let's open it up a little bit. And tomorrow you get to text, or you can Google it if you can't wait till tomorrow. It's a pretty juicy poem. Zero Circle, it's called. He says, be helpless and dumbfounded, unable to say yes or no. This is one of the themes of this. When you actually, we think it's a negative when we're in this zero circle where we feel helpless about what's going on. We feel dumbfounded, unable to say yes or no, which is a classic kind of non-dual image. We're talking about seeing the world without splitting it. And one of the great Zen masters, 5th century Zen master, said, it's easy to be at peace in the world. Just avoid picking and choosing, unable to say yes or no. It's the same image. Be helpless, dumbfounded, unable to say yes or no. Then a stretcher will come from grace to gather us up. Now that image is in another great Rumi poem. I believe I used it the very first Heart to Heart. It's another Sufi. Hafez said it, not Rumi. 100 years later, Hafez talks about the stretcher too. But the idea that there's something to come to gather us up, something from grace. What Hafez says famously, he says, "You've been invited to meet the friend," which is Sufi code for the divine. You've been invited to meet the friend. No one can resist the divine invitation. So that narrows down your choices to just two. You can come to God dressed for dancing, or be carried on a stretcher to God's ward. Yeah, either way, we've got this relationship with the divine, with the absolute, with the ultimate, with the cosmos, if you want. You could use whatever line you want. And we got two choices. We can come dressed for dancing. And if we resist the dance with God, well, then we'll be carried on a stretcher to God's word. We'll make it eventually. It's an optimistic image by the Sufis. There's no way to resist your relationship with the ultimate, whatever you call that. Yeah. But key to it is when you really don't know what to do about something, unable to say yes or no. Actually, there are beings, then, if you can just be in that zero circle of just not thinking, oh, I got to say yes, I got to say no. I don't know, yes or no. You could just relax. And all the traditions say there is a presence that will come. I have a poem that says, it's called Don't Make Decisions. And the image of it is I use the image of the muddy water in the jar, and I say, don't make decisions. You don't have to say yes or no. People will force you into that. You don't have to say yes or no. But wait, listen for the decision. Wait till the muddy water clears, and then you'll know. It won't even be a matter of yes or no. But there's a waiting, and here we're talking about just staying in this place of dumbfoundedness. And he says, he sort of, humbles us a little bit. And we are too dull-eyed to see that beauty. If we say we can, we're lying. If we say no, we don't see it. That no will behead us. The image of being beheaded is to cut off the mind, the left brain that divides reality into yes and no, good and bad. He says that. So let us uh, uh, be sure of, let us rather not be sure of anything. Now, that's really a hard state to get comfortable with. Merton had a great line on this. Rumi says, so let us not be sure of anything. How can we maintain that kind of equanimity where we're not sure what's happening? And rather than grabbing for a yes or a no or direction, how can we just rest in that zero circle? And then he says, miraculous beings will come running to help if we can just sit in our confusion, sit in the pain that's arising, you might say. Miraculous beings come running to help. So let us rather not be sure of anything. That's really tough. Nobody likes that kind of uncertainty. The ego hates it. And so we're really grabbing for a position. Let us be sure. Let us not be sure of anything. Merton said this. He said, because we're talking about faith there. You have to have a certain faith in another way. Let us not be sure of anything. Merton said the opposite of faith is not doubt. It's not this dumbfoundedness. It's not this, you can't see an inch in front of you sometimes. It's not that. That's not the opposite of faith. Merton said the opposite of faith is not doubt. It's not this confusion. It's certainty. It's saying, yes, this is the way. Joe Campbell, when he was talking to Bill Moyers, he was in this vein. He'd understand this poem totally. He said, when you open your back door and you see this yellow brick road leading straight from your house to the Emerald City, so the only thing you can be sure of is it's not your road. It's not your road. And that's where, the opposite of faith is not doubt. So we can actually see the beauty in doubt, the beauty of not knowing. I have some of you in this group are reading The Cloud of Unknowing, 14th century mystical text, contemplative text by an anonymous monk from England during the time of the Black Plague. He was talking about seeking the cloud of unknowing. So it's all really very counterintuitive stuff. So crazed, lying in a zero circle, mute, we shall be saying finally with tremendous eloquence, lead us. He's saying, it's very interesting how crafty he is. Crazed, lying in a zero circle, mute. In other words, we can't make a sound. So we will be saying finally with a tremendous eloquence, lead us. The fact that, so we have this recurring image, people will appear with a stretcher when you're in this kind of situation. Miraculous beings come to help. And if you could just stay in this zero circle of silence, of not knowing, we'd be saying with our very being that we're willing to be led, lead us. And one thing leads to another. If you let it. If you don't jump off and try to, go this way or that, just this waiting to be led. That's a big part of what we're about to do in a couple minutes when we just sit and let go of all the storylines in our head, all the stories of ourselves, all our own little autobiographies that we're constantly writing and revising. We leave out the bad parts, of course. We leave out the stumbling and the mess. if we can just sit in a zero circle, which is a good image of contemplation, we can just sit there and letting go of the thought. We've already been beheaded, he said. So we let go of the thought and we're just there. Okay. And then he says, when we've totally surrendered to that beauty, the beauty of just being open to whatever the universe sends, we shall become a mighty kindness. I really love that term. The fact that he calls it a mighty kindness. This is powerful. Jesus was talking about love, and love was the way. Rumi said that his way was love. The Dalai Lama says his religion is kindness. They're not talking about something as sort of will-o'-the-wispy as an emotion. No, they're talking about a stance that's powerful. A mighty kindness is really what love, I think, in the New Testament, agape in Greek was the word. It's not the effective emotion at all. It's a sense of, okay, here I am. This experience, whatever it is, darkness, light, whatever, I'm not going to be resisting it. So it's a sense of being kind. Mighty kindness is a sense of being open to whatever life sends you in this moment, in this experience. And that's the kind of attitude to take into your contemplative sitting. So it's quite interesting what we're doing. We're dropping thought, we're dropping the stories, we're dropping the trains to pull into the station with our various trains of thought. We're sort of dropping those as soon as we notice we're on one. We drop it. We just come back into being into this zero circle, this openness. Remember, the art of the enzo is it's empty in the middle, which is wide open, but it's not closed. See, those are all images of just how you sit and receive. One thing leads to another if you let us. Surrender is just that's just that. You're sitting, surrendering in the here, in the now. Kind towards whatever comes. Whatever your quality of your experience, you can receive it in kindness. Be kind to yourself during this time. That is a mighty force. That's what Jesus called love. When he talked about resist not evil, I think it was sort of it's a problematical translation. He wasn't, he obviously threw the moneylenders out of the temple area because that was love too. You crossed the boundary here. But I think he really meant resist not the experience of the moment, and especially if it seems to be dark, painful. Most of us, our whole life is, the neurotic part of my life is all organized so that I never have any disturbing emotions. I would probably suggest that's everybody's neurotic organization. We're trying to avoid disturbance. And so to be able to sit and allow any experience to roll through you, every experience arises, displays for a while, goes. That's fine. The storyline is the trains of thought are actually our kind of way of keeping us from any kind of disturbance. Interesting. Yeah, we'll be exploring this more fully in the 14th intensive. Yeah. So let's leave it at that, and let's get ready to just drop into the zero circle of contemplation.